Welcome to the Dealmaker Catalyst Podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. Today we have Tom Olson. Tom Olson has a dream to flip the city of Gary, Indiana, and make it become a place that people and businesses move to instead of from. In Tom's career, he has done over 2,000 transactions, over 1,200 flips, helped investors purchase and rehab over 700 rentals. He is a licensed general contractor, and his company has now done over 1,300 rehabs. Tom has borrowed and, more importantly, paid back over $60 million of private capital to do his own deals. Having a good name in real estate is more important than any kind of money Tom has ever made. And that good name led him to starting Conduit Capital, a hard money lending fund for accredited investors to help more investors create their own financial freedom. Tom has a growing and thriving full-service property management company and real estate brokerage. They also own and manage 45 midterm rentals. Tom has a passion for helping missionaries and good charities like Share the Love. Each year, Tom gives and raises money for not only Share the Love, but also the seniors of his Christian high school for them to go on a senior mission trip. Tom also hosts the Gary, Indiana Dealmaker Meetup and national conference each year called Gary Dealmaker. Tom, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jason, and I appreciate you helping Jim and Dealmaker on this endeavor. I'm glad to get this started.
Yep, absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. And what's exciting for me is a lot of the guests as we kick this thing off are from Jim's network, and it's my first time meeting a lot of them when we hop on this podcast. So it's fun for me to kind of learn more about you and hear your story alongside the audience. And as I have with so many guests so far that have come from Jim's connections, I like to kick the show off with explain to us kind of your connection with Dealmaker and how yours and Jim's relationship came to be.
Oh, it's interesting you asked that question because me and Jim had known each other for about 3.5, 4 years before we both realized we were both from Jamestown, New York.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of this weird little thing that me and Jim have. But I actually first met Jim, I think it was 2011. It might have been 2012. It's in that range, on what used to be called an IRA fund cruise. So it used to be kind of hosted by Quest, and then Quest IRA kind of didn't want their name on it. So then that kind of dwarfed into the Financial Friends Network, and then the Financial Friends Network has kind of split off, and now it's kind of like Dealmaker on one side, Investor Addicts on another side, and a bunch of other kind of, subgroups that have kind of, kind of split off from all of that. But me and my wife and Jim and Cheryl just hit it off really well in the first couple of cruises that we went to. And then I started speaking at his meetings yearly in Virginia. And then we were part of Freedom Founders together. And honestly, it's just been a joy to be able to do business with Jim. Jim is one of the most genuine. He really is a hardworking person as well, but really just loves the Lord, loves people, and wants to be an encourager. He always talks about having gratitude. And he really does want to give back as well. And that's kind of why I love being a part of Dealmaker. It's why I love Jim. And that's kind of why I wanted my name on, Dealmaker or Dealmaker on, on everything that we do, because of their focus on charity, because of their focus on, giving first, and not just being one of these, guru, organizations that just tries to sell you into like a $25,000, $50,000, program. So,
Yeah.
But
I
I love Jim and I love Cheryl, and I would say he's definitely one of my best friends in the entire world. I had a prayer request this morning sent to him, and just love being in the network.
Yeah, he's been. I haven't known Jim obviously as long as you have, but in the short time I have known him, I echo everything you said. Right, it doesn't take long for all those traits about him that everybody loves. They were apparent to me the first time I met him, and he's such all the things you said. What surprised me about Jim, and I'll share this funny story, and then we'll get into your everything you've got going on. We also host a local Dealmaker group in Hampton Roads, Virginia, but Jim came to our first event a couple months ago, and I've known Jim for a while. I've interviewed him on my other podcast, and I've known about all the things and all the communities and networks, everything under his umbrella. But he stands up in front of the group and it was about 60 people. It was our first Dealmaker event, and he introduced himself as an introvert, and I'm standing beside him. I'm like, you're an introvert? Like, you've created this monster of a community as an introvert. And he was making a point, and he identifies himself as an introvert, but he asked everybody in the room to raise their hand if they thought of themselves as an introvert. And it was really eye-opening to me that half the room raised their hand. And what it really, I mean, this is very recent, but it really opened my eyes to the fact that in this world, like, Tom, I can tell you're not an introvert. I am not an introvert, but a lot of people are, and Jim has done a fantastic job curating a community that welcomes those personalities and puts them together and creates relationships, partnerships, and thriving businesses, charities, and all that because of it. So I just want to share that story with you because it sums up who Jim is, you know.
It's interesting that you say that because I always tell everybody I'm an introverted extrovert. There's an extrovert inside of me that wants to get out, but I don't want to get out unless I know I'm welcomed.
Right.
So on the one side of me, if you don't know me, I really am an introvert. Now, if I've been given a position, if I've been given something, like this is the first time we've met, so you probably thought I was an extrovert, but I would say I'm not because I've been asked to be on this podcast, so I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna step up. So when I'm get asked to speak on stage, when I get asked to do something, I try to thrive in that, but it's not my natural thing. But I only want to do it if I know I'm wanted. So I'm the same way in general as well. If I don't know you, like, you might think I'm either stuck up or I don't, because like I'm not just gonna come up to you and maybe unless I feel like it's my position, unless somebody's put me in that position, to be that host or to be that MC or whatever, I'm probably not going to be an extrovert. So anyways, but Jim is a nice love guy, a great guy. Love the fact that, he does bring introverts together and welcomes everybody.
Yep, absolutely. So Tom, let's start talking a little bit more about you. So I just read in that bio and I listed off several things that you are a part of, and these aren't things that you dabble in. These are things that you're experts and you're in these areas. You've built different bolt-on and like vertically integrated everything along the way. And on this show, what we usually do is we kind of dive in on one topic, but your arena and like your umbrella covers so many things that you're kind of overseeing and that you've built over time. I'd like to take this and spend time talking about the evolution of all that. Like, where did you start? What was the first thing you got into? And we'll start there. What was the first thing you got into in the real estate world?
And this kind of is I think you're starting to see this more and more for people, but for a while this wasn't the case. I actually started in construction. So you're starting to see a lot more people that are in construction dabble in real estate as well. That wasn't the case, I would say 20, 30 years ago. But as a 12-year-old boy, I started working in construction and learned the ropes in construction, learned that whole thing. Again, that's not for everybody because everybody doesn't have that background. But that's where I started. And then I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and got me interested in, having cash machines. Literally, I remember the word, cash machines. And they were talking about if you could have a cash machine that spit out $100 per month, talking about a single family rental, how many of those would you want? And I was like, well, geez, man, like as many as it would take to be financially free. So, I mean, my story, we don't have time for my entire story to go through everything and the whole how we got here stage, but that's kind of where I started. I started in construction. We're still in construction. There was a time where I kind of felt like I should maybe consider letting go of it, but I always thought in the back of my mind, man, this is a valuable piece in the whole entire puzzle that is real estate investing. So I never really wanted to let it go, which kind of led me, but kind of also forced me to let go of things. And once I learned how to let go of things and read some really good books, I have read about 700 or 800 books on business in my career, and I'm gonna always push that. Readers are leaders. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. And if you're not a reader, man, pick up a book. Log into Audible. At least read or listen to a book a month. There was a couple of years there where I was reading or listening to a book a week. and trying to stay on that 50 books a year type of, I feel like now it's a little too much for my brain. I got too much going on to kind of consume that much. But I love that. And I think it's good to be able to learn every single day. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of, where, I cut my teeth, and that's kind of it. So really, like, for investing in real estate, I bought my first rental when I was like 21 years old, started my own business, young, in construction, and then kind of started dabbling in helping investors. So my whole thing was starting, in this world, I guess, was helping investors back in 2006 to 2009. My world kind of crashed at that point in time. And went from making about $120,000 a year to $20,000 a year, like almost like overnight. When the new construction boom of the 2000 era, like, literally got swept out from underneath us. And I just started making phone calls. I had never really had to make a phone call to get work. It was always word of mouth. Always had plenty. But at that time, I was like, oh crap! Like, I need to actually make some phone calls. I made a phone call to a guy, and he said, "Meet me at this job." And so I met him at a job, and I gave him a quote, and I said, "This is what I can do. This is how fast I can do it. This is how much it's going to cost." And he's like, "All right, you're hired." He's like, "Okay, you can start Monday." So I start, do the job. At the end of the job, he told me something that completely changed my mindset about what I was doing. And it was, "Tom, you are the first person, the first contractor I've ever hired. I've been doing construction for 30 years. You're the first contractor I've ever hired that showed up on time, that gave me a quote on the spot, that started the rehab on time, ended on time, and ended on budget." He's like, "I've never had a contractor ever do that one time in my 30 years of doing." And I was like, okay, this is just what we're supposed to do, right? As a contractor, I thought, this is just what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to just, show up, which, our good friend Chuck Glover loves to say, one of the big things is just show up, guys, be in the room, and so just show up, have enough knowledge when you show up to actually be able to say, "Hey, this is what I can do," and then do what you say you're going to do. And I have learned that 80% of sales is just literally answering the phone. And then the other 20% is literally just doing what you say you're going to do. And in the long run, you'll get way more business by just doing what you say you're going to do, than you will ever do by any of the marketing that you can possibly do. So that's kind of how I've lived my life and how I've tried to do everything that we do. So from that construction job, that one guy basically started putting me in charge of all his rehabs. And then I started getting in contact with investors, and I was actually managing their projects for them, giving them scopes of work up front. And I kind of had to learn the whole thing. I literally learned it from the inside out. I didn't learn it from going to a seminar, learning what after repair value is. I learned it from being a contractor, saying, okay, I'm in the middle of this whole thing. Okay, now I understand what it takes to actually buy a good deal, what it looks like, how much rehab it's going to actually take, because and actually, I think contractors have an advantage at that point because they can actually see things that, most people don't see. And they know how much things should really cost. So, and then like my whole thing was from that time forward, then I started connecting investors to realtors and understanding what it took for them, what they needed to purchase the property for. And then, in 2009, I actually partnered up with a man. We wholesaled, I don't, 13 or 1,400 homes between 2009 and 2015. And then from there, I felt like we had created this turnkey product and wanted to start a property management company. My partner didn't want to start a property management company. I wanted a brokerage. He didn't want a brokerage. And I didn't really believe in a bunch of unsecured debt, and he wanted a bunch of unsecured debt. And so we parted ways. And from there, we have started One Group Network, which builds rental portfolios for investors. We also build new construction now too. One Construction Management, which is our construction company. One Property Solution, which is our property management company. Sarah Joe, which is our holding company, and our investment company, Conduit Capital, our lending fund, Good Success, which is the Dealmaker, where that sits. And I do some consulting as well. We have a brokerage called Listing Leaders Affiliated. And that's kind of a short story about how we got to where we are. Hopefully that made sense. I know it's a there's a lot that went on there.
And
I don't think
we're
there's enough.
we're about to unpack it. So I love
I don't think we have enough time to get all of that.
right. But
So
I've got the thing that's spinning in my head, and this is I think this is a question that a lot of folks listening are probably thinking right now. You just went through like every step of this, everything you just listed that you've built over all these years. It's not just you alone. And so, like, the question is, how in the world do you have the bandwidth or the capacity to handle all this? So I know the answer has to be you have developed, or maybe you had this naturally, but an ability to lead, delegate, build teams and things like that. So I kind of want to pivot and talk more about that now. So because you can't do, like, you're the visionary. You've seen, like you mentioned, your partner didn't have these visions, you did, so you wanted to kind of build them. So talk about your ability to lead all these different bolt-on businesses that you've built from the top, but put teams in place to make sure they're operating well. They have good systems, processes, efficiencies, things like that.
yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Um, I was into this whole world from 2017 when I completely, parted ways with my partner at about 2020, until I actually realized that people aren't naturally built like me. I really honestly thought that everybody could just, like, why doesn't everybody do this? And kind of what I learned is that everybody shouldn't. Not everybody should have 11 different businesses and 43 employees and, really run. I mean, we run 8 P&Ls very hard. Like, we are reviewing all of the numbers for 8 different P&Ls every single month. And everybody probably shouldn't have, that team that I have. And it's okay. And I kind of want to start with that. It's okay if you don't want to do that. But if you do want to do that, I'm going to tell you, you have to learn from companies that are larger than you. And so I kind of got a hold of two books, and I'll highly recommend these to anybody. The first one is called Scaling Up by the Gazelles. And then the next one is EOS, or I'm sorry, it's Traction by Gino Wickman. And then I hired a coach his name was Frank Curtin. And Frank Curtin came in and implemented our first business operating system for us. And a lot of people get to this point and they're like, okay, I'm done. I've heard what you said, Tom, but I'm done. I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay, 10 grand or whatever. I think most of the guys now are charging $30,000. I remember paying $10,000 in 2015 to implement our first one. But, and I actually do this a little bit for people. I probably do about 3 to 5 a year. I'm not really out marketing myself to actually implement people, but if people are interested in wanting to do this in their own businesses, I think if you ever want to scale and if you ever want to make your business an actual asset, then you have to think this way. Because most people in real estate, they think their only assets is their money, their cash, their investments that they have in the stock market, or their houses, or whatever. But if you want your actual business to be an asset, it has to work and operate without you. And in order for it to work and operate without you, you have to have, number one, the most important thing, in my opinion, is people. That's the first leverage point, is having the right people in the right seats. So there's so many books, man. I wish I had the whole list of books that I would tell you to everybody to read if they're going to go down this trail. But I know some people don't like this, but I do actually think that, 10X is a good book to kind of learn some things. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I do think 10X is actually a pretty good book to read. Good to Great is another one to read. Right seats, or right people on the right bus, in the right seats. What is the other one? Oh man, there's one that's going to come to my mind. It's going to bug me that it's not.
Yeah,
That's not.
you don't want to get me started on books.
I know. Trust me.
Of in my head.
And like, this is why I started the podcast. Reading is so important. And don't just read the books. Read them over and over and over again. If you're listening to them on Audible, listen to them over and over and over again, because you're going to catch things the second and third and fourth time that you didn't catch the first time. So, I mean, to me, I'm a Christian. I think it's the same way with the Bible. Like, you can't just read it one time and just think you know it all. You got to go through it over and over, give it and study to show thyself approved, and learn the insides and outsides of all those things. So we hired Frank, and kind of getting back on track with your question here. How do you integrate? How do you, have all these extra verticals? And really, like, I think it also kind of starts with if you really want to ever sell your business. So if you have a business, most of our flipping businesses are unsellable.
Yeah.
They're just worthless. Most of our construction businesses are unsellable. However, I started looking at which businesses are actually sellable, and I said, oh, wow, brokerages sell for a pretty good multiple. Lending companies sell for a pretty good multiple. Property management companies sell for a pretty good multiple. And then I started thinking, wow, my businesses are actually assets. Are my businesses actually worth, and where do I want to move in that direction? There was a year I did over 300 real estate deals. I never want to do 300 real estate deals as a flipper or as a wholesaler ever again. Honestly, it was. We actually did 243 deals the year before and made more money doing 243 than we did doing 300 deals. So that's something for you right there. So that's kind of where I started thinking, you always have to be willing to be wrong. In business, you have to be willing to be wrong. If you think that you know it all, Dealmaker's not for you. I'm just going to tell you that right now. If you think that you're the only, authority on every single subject, like that's, again, back to why we love Jim. Jim's list, he's always learning. He's always trying to say, hey, is there a better way? That's kind of like the engineer in him, because Jim's an engineer if you didn't know that. So always trying to engineer how to make your business better. And then, so this is kind of nitty gritty. So this is kind of where I think the rubber hits the road. This is what, if you hire a coach, they're actually going to teach you to do. You can do some of these steps on your own. I just don't think most people can actually, start this by themselves. They really need a coach because it takes hard questions. And that's normally what we're not willing to do to ourselves. We're not willing to ask the hard questions to ourselves and really answer honestly to ourselves. Hey, what's really going on here? That's why most people need, marriage counseling. Most people need, consultants in their business, because, those are the people that are actually going to ask the hard questions. The first thing that you have to do, and I think everybody should do this. This is if you're going to stay small or if you're going to go big. It doesn't matter. The first thing you need to understand is, what is your vision? Like, what is it that you actually want to do? And once I realized, hey, my two big goals in my world, and actually I think part of the purpose, the whole reason why God created me was to give money to missions, to help spread the gospel around the world, to give money to charities that are worthy, that are help supporting that cause. And kind of part of my 2006 story that I didn't really get into is when I went from making $120,000 a year to literally making $20,000 a year on the drop of a hat. I moved my family from Crown Point, Indiana, which in this area is a Class A neighborhood. That's where, everybody wants to live, is in Crown Point, Indiana, to Gary, Indiana. And I literally rented my house that I had just purchased for me and my family about a year and a half before that. I rented my house that more than paid my mortgage and gave me about $350 a month positive cash flow. And I paid $19,000 cash for a house, put $15,000 or $16,000 into it. It was a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath home. Think about that. I paid $19,000 for a house, right? Okay. And paid $15,000 in rehab, and then rented my basement, rented 2 bedrooms in my basement, $500 each. That basically paid most of my monthly expenses. So I humbled myself, and I did what I needed to do in order to, make this whole thing happen. 2006, 2009. And when I was living there, I used to go down and walk this track that was there at a school that was abandoned, and they didn't even have the school in business anymore. And I would just see people, and it was like a loss of hope, almost like a desperation in people's eyes. And I would kind of just start praying, God, just help these people, help the city of Gary, Indiana. And honestly, one day after doing that for about 6 months, it was almost like it hit me. God placed me there. And honestly, now I'm no savior to anybody, and I'm nothing special, but God gave me that burden. And from that day forward, it took me about 2 years to actually verbalize this and start telling people, hey, my dream is to flip the city of Gary, Indiana, and make it become a place that businesses and people move to instead of away from. And I will repeat that over and over and over again. I will say that, when I'm at the economic and development meetings that I'm a part of in Gary, Indiana, I will say that in any forum, that is part of my vision and my goal. So actually, once I figured out, hey, these are the two things I wanted to do. I want to flip the city of Gary, Indiana, and I want to give money and I want to be, that's what I want to do. Everything in my business world needs to fit inside of that. All right. So if it doesn't fit inside of that, I need to let it go. Even though I might think it's going to make money, it doesn't matter. I really need to think about, hey, does this fit into one of those two things? And every year trying to even though we add on more businesses or add on different things, we're also slimming things down. We're always looking at, 80-20. What is the, 20 most important things in our business that are making the most money, that have the least amount of headache, that if we could have our 100% of our business doing, these are the things we're doing. And then also, what are our bottom 20%? What are our time wasters? What are the things in our business that are keeping us from doing more top 20% line items? So that vision and making sure that you understand, if you're the owner of your business, you're the visionary. And if you're not a good visionary, hire a visionary. It's okay. It's okay to hire another visionary and have somebody else come in, hire a consultant, whatever you need to do to, help you figure out what it is that you really want to do in your life. And then from there, it starts to become easier. Once you're okay, the problem is most people aren't willing to be okay with what they really want. So whatever it is that you really want, whatever it is, the reason why you believe God created you, you've got to figure that out. That is the most important thing that you can figure out in business and in life, honestly. Figure out why God created you. And once you figure that out, then you can start to dial it in. So dialing it is every single year. So we started, again, 12 years ago, down this journey. What are our goals? What do we want to accomplish in 10 years? Traction calls it your big, hairy, audacious goal. What are those things that you want to do in your life? And you can't again, mine may be too big. I may not be able to achieve those in 10 years. These are lifetime goals that I feel like I'm involved in here. So I kind of had to dial that back a little bit and say, hey, what do you think I can achieve in the next 10 years? And from there, then you kind of even back it off a little farther. What do you think we can get done in the next 3 to 5 years? You got to pick that target, because some people can't think 5 years down the road. You could do a 2-3 year picture, whatever it is. And you don't have to, these things aren't goals necessarily. These are like, what do I think? How do I think, I'm going to be? Where do I think my business is going to be in the next 2 to 3, 5 years? Whatever that is. This isn't like an actual goal. We're going to get to actual goals in a second here, but it's important to understand directionally, what's your big target and what's your kind of middle range target. Where do you think you're shooting? And because if you don't know what you're shooting at, you'll just shoot at everything. And you'll never hit your target. And then from there, it really is so important. I cannot stress this enough, to set yearly goals for yourself. I do this personally, and I do this in every one of my businesses. I sit down with everybody that's involved in that business, and we spend about 2 to 3 hours at the beginning of the year going through, hey, what are our yearly goals?
Yep.
And then now those are specific. Yearly goals should be SMART, SMARTs, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, relevant to the cause, and trackable. If they're not one of those, if they're not all those things, they're not considered SMART goals. That's a whole nother book that you can get into reading or whatever, if you want to look up SMART goals and what that is. So our yearly goals are SMART goals. We also add measurables. So some people think of goals and measurables the same. I think they're a little differently. Obviously, measurable is tracked by a number. Revenue, net profit, those are top line things that sales in certain companies, and every different company is going to be different for you. So a flipping company, a wholesaling company, you shouldn't even track revenue. You should only track gross profit. Trust me, revenue's vanity. But in other companies like property management, revenue is very relevant. So you have to kind of understand, which KPIs, what things you should be tracking, in your own businesses. So we go through this and then every quarter. So after our yearly, we do measurables and goals. And then our quarterly, we do 3 things. Every quarter for every company, we sit down with my asset leader and everybody that's in that company that is relevant to that P&L at all. We sit down and we go over our measurables, our rocks. They call that rocks for the next quarter. That's a whole thing. I don't think we have time to get into what rocks are, but you can look that up if you want to do some homework. And then we also do stop doings or focus on. So I think a lot of times in business, when you start doing these quarterly meetings with a team, you're going to find out that people just want to complain. So it's good to just say, hey, what are the things we need to stop doing? What's keeping us from hitting our goals? Last quarter, we didn't hit all of our goals. And guess what, guys? You're never going to reach all your goals. If you're reaching all your goals, you're setting your targets way too low. So you need to understand that when you start this system, you're going to suck at it. It's just like doing your first rental. It's just like doing your first thing. When you start setting goals, you are going to suck at it. You're either going to sandbag and way overshoot, or you're going to way overshoot or your goals and not even come close to hitting them. It's okay. You keep doing it anyways, and you keep getting better every single time. So that whole process, and then we do the weekly meeting. We have monthly P&L reviews. We also review all of our properties and our rentals review sheet and all of that stuff as well. Our budgets, all those things are reviewed by our finance team and by the asset leaders of the different companies that we have. So that's something everybody should do.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of other things that need to happen if you're going to kind of go big, for instance. And I think part of that structure, and that's something I feel like God's naturally gifted me with. I also believe that God's blessed me with really good people. And I see this a lot where people just are not blessed with good people around them. Maybe they don't have a good network to be able to pull from. I've pulled a lot of people from church and family, and that's helped me. I think that's also, obviously that can be a thorn at times as well. And I've had some of those thorns as well. Sometimes you try to help people and they're not always the best people because they're not helping anybody but themselves. And but I think all in all, that's where it starts, is having the right people. When you actually have somebody implement for you, I'm going to go back to the implementation because this is so important to finding the right people. Behind me, you're going to see a sign here. It actually says charity, stewardship, community, growth. Your core values are so important to the people that you attract. And you need to, number one, know what your core values are, know what they mean, know what they don't mean, know what are your non-negotiables. So for us, these are in order. Like our most important core value is charity. It's the whole reason why we do what we do. What we do is stewardship. We believe that God gave us everything that we have, including every opportunity, every client, every tenant, every investor that invests in us. We are supposed to be good stewards for every one of them. And that's really, and also we believe that you're supposed to be faithful in the little things. So that's all part of that community. It's not about us. It's about like helping everybody else. And we should be adding to our community, and which is growth. Growth is learning. Growth is adding to your community. So all of these core values fit together in the whole picture of what we're trying to accomplish, which is be a conduit, not a bucket. Like the whole reason why God created us is to work, to have, to give. And that's kind of where that whole, but this is so important. You need to have these things written down. You need to have we believe statements on every single core value. We believe that charity means X. We have 5 or 6 we believe statements. We also believe, hey, these are people that are not going to fit. If you're a selfish person and you only care about yourself, guess what? You're probably not going to have a good charity aspect. If you're not faithful in the little things and you just, you don't want people to hold you accountable, you're probably not going to be a good steward, right? If you're a lone wolf, you're probably not going to have the core value of community. And if you think you're a know-it-all, you're probably not going to grow. And that's really like how we lay it out there. Before anybody gets hired by our companies, they're watching a 15, 20, 30-minute video, about 20-something minutes, I think, video of me explaining what we're all about, who we want to hire, what we expect of you, what we don't expect of you. And these are the types of people that are probably not going to fit in here. Because if you are one of these people, just quit now. We don't want you.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to articulate that. You have to be willing to say, hey, this is who I am. These are the type of people I want around me. And there's another good book I'd love to refer is It's Okay to Be the Boss. I think there's so many books out there that want to act like we as entrepreneurs are over managing or we are, micromanaging. Most of it is absolute, completely BS. There's a pandemic of undermanagement, not overmanagement. I think most people that think that there's micromanagers are people that just don't want to be held accountable for what they're supposed to do. And that's the honest to God truth. So it's okay to be the boss. And that's something that actually is kind of hard for me, to be honest with you. And it's something I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. One of my hardest days of a whole year is if I have to fire somebody. I do not like firing somebody. I want everybody to come along with me on my journey. So that's, again, why I've got to put strong people and strong leaders around me. Most of the hiring and firing doesn't happen by me. It happens by all the asset leaders that happen. So I've gotten to core values. I've gotten into goals, and there's some more things in goals and how to reach goals that I don't think we have time to unpack today, but I really think it's important to go over structure. And I think everybody has to figure this out for themselves, right? EOS kind of has its own structure, a visionary, integrator. Every company has three main purposes or three main departments in your business. You need to understand what they are and what type of people normally fit best in them. Sales. Nothing happens in business until a sale happens, okay? You can have the best product, and you have no sales, you have no business. The sales is actually more important than your product. So trust me, Microsoft has made a ton of money with a crappy product for a very long time. Now their products have actually gotten better. But anyways, I won't get on my Apple soapbox here with PCs and Apple products. But anyways, so, sales and marketing is a very important piece of your business. Operations, what is it that you do? That is very big in some companies. In a wholesale business, there's not much operations. It's basically all sales and marketing. And then finally, you have admin. So admin is basically finance and HR. Those are probably the two biggest, pieces in admin. And that's kind of, I think everybody needs to understand, hey, this is how it works. I think it's okay for you to be the visionary and integrator in your small business. A lot of people have made a lot of mistakes by hiring an integrator, and they had no business hiring an integrator. They were nowhere near the P&L, nowhere near the profit. I made this mistake myself personally. So I encourage you not to do that. So I have kind of almost made hybrid. All my companies don't have what's called an integrator. I don't have one integrator over all my companies, although I have had at one point in time. I thought it was a huge mistake. But what I have is what I call asset leaders. So they're a little bit higher than an ops manager or an ops, like somebody that's in charge of ops. They're over everything kind of in their business. And they're the one person that's in charge of the P&L for that particular business. They're the ones that are supposed to make money for each individual company, right? They're the ones that drive everything, the day-to-day in those types of businesses. I try not to have a job in my business, although I end up getting sucked in, trust me. But that is my goal. My goal is to not have a job in my business. My goal is to have my businesses work and have my asset leaders run the businesses without me and only come to me if they have questions. And then I also have a marketing department that kind of overlays all of the above. And then I also have a finance department that kind of overlays everything. I have one CFO that kind of is in charge of like all of the bookkeeping. Now she has a couple different bookkeepers that we kind of help out. And then property management now has gotten to the point, because we're collecting $1.5 million of rent every single month, that there is a full-time person, sitting in that finance seat in property management. But so that's how I've done it. You have to choose for yourself what structure you want to have. But just kind of understand, every business has some universal rules. So another mistake that I've made that I think that, I've learned recently is that if your payroll is more than 50% of your gross profit, it's going to be very hard to be profitable. And you've got to keep an eye on these key things that are high level in your business. I don't have time to belabor that, but that's a very important thing that we actually track that. Like every month, I want to know, like, what's my revenue or what's my gross profit versus payroll. Because a lot of times we get way out of whack. Sometimes we're understaffed, and then we wonder why we're doing so much work ourselves. And then sometimes we're most of my businesses, I'm a little bit on the overstaffed. I found myself way overstaffed at times. And we've really pulled back. And that's really kind of what most people don't understand is where you normally get profitable as a business is in the finance seat. That's where actually most businesses become profitable as a business. Now, not as a flipper. If you're going to just flip some houses yourself and you just are going to do it all yourself, hey, number one, I don't even really think it's a business, although it might be a business because it's an LLC and because it's whatever, but it's not a business that's really serving you. It's not an asset. You are the business. And if you're the solopreneur, that's okay. Again, I'm not here to try to, I have caught myself at times, and I've been corrected and I've been wrong, honestly, thinking everybody needs to have a business and everybody needs to be a business owner. You go all the way back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? What did he say? There's 4 quadrants. What are those 4 quadrants, right? Employee. That's one way to make money. Number 2, solopreneur. Most business owners are solopreneurs. They are that, serial entrepreneur. And that's fine. You could make more money being a solopreneur than you will make, and you'll have a little bit more freedom. But you're not. You should not, in my opinion, put yourself in the B category. That you're a real business owner, because if the business doesn't work and operate without you, it's not really a sellable business. It's you. The whole business is you. And then investments as well. So, where do you want to be? And I think it all kind of just goes with time of life. What's your experiences? So Jason, you might come to me and you might say, hey, where should somebody start? Honestly, it is a different answer for every single person. Yeah. And I think the gurus that get up and start teaching, oh, this is the first person you should hire. Well, that might have been the first person they should hire, but it's not always the first person you should hire. For me, it was an assistant. And I think for most people, it might be a personal assistant. Hiring somebody that can learn everything that you do and then figure out, where do they fit? Do they fit in the admin seat? For me, I cannot stand putting in data. I cannot, but I love reading it. Yeah. Okay. So, for me, one of my most important, people is somebody that's inputting all the data. My books are kept up weekly. Like every receipt is reconciled every single week for every single, we literally hire a full-time VA, and that's her whole job, is to make sure I have all the receipts for every business. And guys, this is thousands of transactions a month. Like thousands of transactions are being processed by our credit cards and all the different companies. So it is so important to me that I know my numbers, that I have hired a full-time person to do nothing but nag everybody, to charge something, to know exactly what my numbers are, exactly how much money is in every one of my accounts. That's my money, and how much money is somebody else's money. And I'll kind of get off the rails here, and maybe you can get me back if you want to, Jason. But I will tell you the reasons why most people fail big. Okay, because this is what's happening. We're seeing this happen a lot, and it's heavy on my heart right now. I see a lot of lenders that are not getting paid. I see a lot of, people that are reaching out to me like in trouble. And I'm going to tell you there's 2 reasons why I see most people get in trouble. And the number one reason is they don't know their numbers. No, I'm telling you guys, like I cannot stress to you the importance of knowing your numbers, having good bookkeeping, having somebody that you trust that's running them. If you can't find somebody you trust, then you have to do it yourself until you can figure out how you can find somebody that you can trust to do your bookkeeping. But they've got to be kept up to date. You cannot just reconcile your books every quarter, guys. And I mean, God forbid if you're waiting till the end of the year and hoping that your accountant's just going to figure it out, guys. Like, if you're going to own a business, it is your responsibility to have good books. Robert Kiyosaki made this statement. I don't believe everything Kiyosaki says. I've learned a lot from him, but he said, I do not trust people who don't have a bookkeeper. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of wisdom in that. If you don't have somebody else that's holding you accountable in your own bookkeeping, like, you got a problem. You need somebody else that's holding you accountable, because we as entrepreneurs need to be held accountable just as much as everybody else needs to be held accountable. Now, you got to be able to have all the strings and everything. You got to be able to see everything that's going on. And there should be lots of different things in your business. For instance, there's only one person in my entire company that can write and sign a check. That's me. Okay. But there's a lot of different people that can initiate, a lot of different people that can write checks, but then that person cannot sign checks. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you got to have these things. I didn't even have time to get into systems and processes and process mapping, but we can definitely get into that at some point, because that's a whole nother, piece of the puzzle of how do you actually then hire, people on top of that? How do you hire that? And how do you make sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction and making that all happen? So,
I think, Tom, so a couple of things I want to point out and all of that stood out to me, and I think resonates or should resonate with folks. And one big one is, like, my biggest mentor, you may know her. I don't know if you know Kelly Garrett, that owns Rehab Wallet out of Charleston, South Carolina. They're bigger debt fund lenders.
Okay.
Well, she's been a mentor to me for years, big consultant in our lending company and business. And one thing she said early on, two things, and you just hit on all this, very, very detailed. But my job as a leader is to create a culture and cast a vision. And you talked about in depth those two things. Your culture and visions is sitting right there behind you. The words are there, and I bet they're everywhere across all your businesses and offices. So, and she used the example, and you've probably heard the story, but back when NASA was trying to put a man on the moon, JFK goes into the NASA headquarters, and he's walking down the hallway, and there's a guy mopping the floor, like the hallway floor. And he said, "Oh, what is your job?" He said, "My job is to put a man on the moon." Well, he was a janitor, but the leader at that time casted the vision and created a culture that everybody had this job of putting a man on the moon. And you explain your vision and culture is charity and making Gary, Indiana a better place for everybody that's in, and make people want to go there. So I hearing you talk, I have no doubt that everybody from the VA that's handling all your receipts all the way up to you understands very clearly what the vision and the culture is of your company. Is that fair to say?
I would say it's never 100% because you as a leader, it's your responsibility to continually cast that vision. You're going to always have people that are new that are coming in, and you're always going to have people that forget. So it is important to continue to cast that vision, to remind people. So I also had this is something else that I was guilty of at one time, Jason, is I casted this big vision and I forgot about each silo vision, because each silo has to have its own thing. So let me give you an example. In property management, the most important thing we do is fill vacancies. The most important thing. It's more important than maintenance. It's more important than evictions. It's more important than anything else, is to fill vacancies. So I tell everybody, like you just said, it's everybody's job to fill vacancies. So it doesn't matter what you have to do, because if vacancies are filled, a lot of our problems go away, right? So if you own rentals, that really is, like, in your rental business, that's the number one most important thing in your business, is to fill the freaking vacancies. And if you're a wholesaler, the most important thing is to sell the property. Like, make sure those properties get sold. You can get as money as you want under contract, but if you don't sell any, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just gonna spend money.
Yes.
So continually casting big vision, and then also continually casting the small vision as well.
And you mentioned a lot of different books. One book I love, I go back and read it every year, is The One Thing by Gary Keller. And a lot of what you've talked about is like every work back from that big vision, whether it's 10, 5, or definitely 1 year that is more numbers driven. But what every quarter, every month, every day, what's the one thing that everybody on the team can do to go towards that one big vision? And I think that has a lot to do to kind of wrap up what you've been talking about as well.
Business is not set it and forget it.
Yeah.
You always have to keep doing that. I did get off track, and if I have just a little quick time here,
yeah,
talk about the number one reason why people fail in our businesses, in what I see at least, is they don't know their numbers. The number two, and this is something I want to warn you, if you're going to try thinking you're going to go down this trail of building a big business, is they scale too fast. They get their operations completely off the rails because they don't have the people, they don't have the processes in place, they don't really have the systems, they don't have the vendors or whatever it is to actually be able to scale, or the knowledge. Like, there's so many things you have to have in order to scale. And I see so many businesses becoming Ponzi schemes because they scale too fast. Yep. And so let me just, again, as much as I want to encourage you to be a business owner, I also want to make sure that you do this with some controls and do this as much as you possibly. And this is why it's so important to be in the room. It's so important to be at your local Dealmaker every single month. And it's important to go to the national conferences. Those national conferences are like shots in the arm. You can kind of get excited and build your network and find more lenders and do all this stuff. And it's so important to be in the room, be around like-minded people. And I appreciate Jim. I appreciate Dealmaker and everything that it's meant to me and to our businesses. And honestly, I think it has a lot to do with my vision and eternity. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, you're speaking to my heart right now with scaling too fast because my business partner and I are living this right now, and I just want to touch on it because it's important. It kind of gives a real life example of exactly what you're talking about. But we have a debt fund, much like you, and so going back to what you said, sales. I've got to go out and sell investors on investing in our vision and what we're doing. Well, we scaled tremendously last year, faster than we had expected. That's a good thing. Everything's great. We could have kept going, but in December we said, nope, we are not going to raise another penny until our systems and processes catch up to this new scale. And we'll sit here. We'll sit here for a year if we have to, because we need the operations in place to grow beyond where we're at and the loan demand to, secure all of this growth that we've had, which we've got that now. But my point is, it's very tempting I'm just a runner, like just go, go, go to keep raising that capital with the mindset of we'll just figure it out. Well, no, that's a very dangerous and reckless approach, especially when you're dealing with investors' capital. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Especially when you're dealing with other people's money, man. It is very important to be a good steward.
Yeah,
because that's what you are in that. And Jason, I'll offer this to you here. Like, if you ever need help, you want me to come down and sit with you guys. I think it's so important sometimes to get other people to come look at what you're doing and ask those hard questions that maybe you haven't thought of or haven't, when you're in the weeds and you're doing it yourself, you don't see those things. Sometimes they're so obvious to other people. Let me give you an example. Larry Goins, actually, I would even call him a mentor at one point in time. Wendy Sweet used to work for Larry Goins. I sat in Larry Goins' office, and I was going down there to learn his business. And he was on a main highway, a main street. And the first question I asked Larry when I came in is, how come there's not a We Buy Houses sign out front? He had this massive front yard. He had tens of thousands of cars going by him. And he was like, I never even thought of that. He's like, you know what? That one sign got me about 10 deals a year just because so sometimes it's so important to get other people to look at your business.
Yeah, I love that, and I may take you up on that for sure, Tom. And the other thing my mentor said to me is, you made this point so beautifully earlier, but if you're building this business and you're building a legit business, you're going to be a business owner. You're in that quadrant. If you can't walk away for 6 months to a year without that thing operating without you, you don't have a business. And we've gotten ourselves to a point where, we own a business, but we're in the weeds right now. And now we're in the process of hitting the brakes, being better operators and leaders of that business. And so a lot of what you talked about, I know is going to resonate with the audience. You've resonated with me for sure because we're in the middle of it. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it's important to understand what real profit is.
Mm-hmm.
What real profit is, number one, you have been paid back as the owner, all the investment that you have put into your business. Most business owners never get that investment back. They're just always in there. Number two, your business is paying you a salary for what you actually bring to that company.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you're out of the business. If you're completely out of the business and you're just an owner, then great. And you've made profit quarter after quarter. It's not just like, okay, I made profit for the year, but you're consistently profitable. That's what a real profitable business is. And that's what really should be the goal of anybody, is to be a real profitable business. And again, you can have a hobby, you can have real estate. That's totally fine. You can actually be a millionaire and not even own a business. It is totally fine. Don't think everybody has to have a business, but if you want your business to be an asset, if you want your business to be a real business, to be in those 4 quadrants, that's kind of how you have to look at things. There's tons of more books.
Yep.
I really wish I could think of the one that's really coming to mind here. But I'm sure I'll get it as soon as I get done with this.
You and I, we may do this. I'm going to talk to Jim. You and I, maybe later this year, can just have a podcast bouncing books back and forth, because there's so much that we can go into. And I'm a book nerd myself. I have a system where I'll listen to them first, and then I go back a second time and read them so I can make notes. So I get it in my head, and then I read based off all my questions I had from listening. So Tom, here's what I want to do. And for I want to respect your time and the audience time, but you've covered at a very high level a lot of things, and we went kind of fast, and we went through a lot of details, but where would you recommend folks that have gotten a taste of Tom Olson and they want more of it? Where can they find more out about you? What resources do you have? If you want to share that with folks, and obviously we'll share any links you have down in the show notes as well.
So the first thing I would say is come out and see us. We do have a 3-day event called Gary Dealmaker, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd here in 2026. Every year it's going to be in that same type of realm. This year we've got Bill Cook as one of our featured speakers. I got many other speakers that are coming. It's a national conference similar to Jim's Dealmaker in Richmond. Mine's a little bit of a different. I'm focusing more a little bit on investments. I will normally bring like maybe even a precious metals guy and some other a little bit of a different feel. And it's in my office. My office has an auditorium in my office here that seats about 120, 150 people. It's a little smaller, a little intimate. I highly recommend that. We also have a active podcast called The Active Turnkey, the best way to buy rentals. And that's definitely a way that you can learn a little bit more about what we offer to investors from that perspective. We have a Conduit Capital podcast, which isn't doing what I wanted to do at some point, but we're going to keep plugging away at it. But you can find us on all the social media platforms. I do a lot of Facebook myself personally, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Haven't really done a lot of TikTok, but I'm on there somewhere. I don't know. My team has good success and the Gary Dealmaker group. So I'd love for you guys to join the Facebook group, the Dealmaker Gary Facebook group as well. And you guys can find out more about us there. Again, like I'm kind of an open book. I'm happy for anybody to email me, Olson, TOLSON @goodsuccess.com if they're interested. And honestly, we host investors about twice a month. They come through and they look at our projects and what we're doing. I'm happy to do that with people as well. But that's kind of what we're doing right now. We've done masterminds in the past. I had the Good Success Mastermind for 7-8 years. I've done other things as well. But right now, with where we're at in the time of life, with our kids where they are, and all the stuff we have going on, that's kind of what we're offering. We were doing a monthly live podcast kind of type of deal, but we stopped that at the end of last year with some things that are kind of going on in my family right now. And I'm on the opposite end of you, Jason. So I thought I would raise money much faster than I raised money. And my problem last year was I had a lot of deals I could fund that I didn't fund because I didn't have enough money in the fund. And because I literally spent 0 time on raising money for my fund. So that's kind of something I need to ramp up my end as well as raising money for our fund as well. So
gotcha. Well, Tom, I mean, you're clearly a wealth of knowledge. You kind of just an hour I've spent with you, I feel like I'm talking to an encyclopedia of real estate. So, and not just real estate, leadership, business structure, all of that. And I know we just scratched the surface on a lot of that. But I thank you for your time. I want to encourage folks for everything you just mentioned. We're going to put links to it below. And I want to encourage folks to follow you. Get out to Gary if they can, to your event. I'm sure you're going to be leading up to that, the months before. You'll be promoting it, and there'll be, all the information about registering and all that. Tom, I appreciate, I know what you mean to Jim and Dealmaker. I'm just getting to know you, and I'm excited to get to know you further. For folks that offline before we even started recording, you can't make the Dealmaker in Richmond event because you're putting your family first, and y'all are going to do spring break. And I think that's a testament to who you are and where your priorities are. And that fits the Dealmaker culture as good as anything. So I think
go see Adam. Yeah. Adam will have a booth. He'll have information about the Dealmaker.
You say Adam?
Adam. And yep. He'll have a Conduit Capital booth there.
Got it.
You guys can go talk to him.
Sounds good. Well, Tom, I appreciate your time. And like I said, we're going to run this back later in the year, and either we may do 2 of them, dive a little deeper on some structure stuff. And then also, I think it'd be a cool podcast to do some book bouncing back and forth. So we'll do that as well. So,
thanks, Jason.
All right, Tom. Thanks a lot. That wraps up this episode of the Dealmaker Catalyst. If you want to keep learning from elite operators and plug into a national community that lives this stuff every day, check out Dealmaker Catalyst. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's serious about leveling up. And we'll see you on the next Dealmaker Catalyst.